Ancient engineers built vast lakes and canals without any modern machines. This lost science of Earth's first artificial lakes and hydraulic networks mastered water for entire civilizations. You will discover the forgotten principles that could help solve our modern water crises. How did societies create reservoirs that lasted 1,000 years? And why was this knowledge lost for centuries? What does it take to build a civilization that truly endures? The first time a human deliberately diverted water, they set in motion a revolution. This was not about finding water, but commanding it, a shift in mindset that would define civilization itself. As nomadic hunter-gatherers began to settle the land, planting seeds and building permanent homes, their survival became tethered to the rains. A single drought could spell disaster. This new, fragile way of life demanded a new kind of intelligence, one that could predict, store, and control the most vital resource on Earth. The earliest farmers started simply, digging ditches to guide floodwaters to their fields. But soon, ambition grew. They began to pile up earth and stone, creating the first deliberate barriers against nature's flow. These were the prototypes for every dam and reservoir that would follow. One of the most startling examples lies in the Black Basalt Desert of Jordan. The site is called Jawa, and here, around 3,000 years before the Common Era, a society erected what is considered the oldest known dam in the world. They built not one, but a series of them, crafting a complex system to capture precious seasonal runoff. Imagine the audacity of this project. Without metal tools, without written engineering plans, they moved massive stones to construct walls that held back entire reservoirs. Jawa was a fortress of human ingenuity, a testament to the primal drive to conquer a dry and unforgiving landscape. The people of Jawa were not just building structures, they were building a future, proving that a society could thrive even in a place where water was a fleeting visitor. The fundamental challenges these pioneers faced were immense. They battled seasonal floods that could wash away a season of work in an afternoon. They struggled against the relentless evaporation of water under a scorching sun. Each problem, however, sparked a creative solution. To combat flooding, they learned to build spillways, clever channels that allowed excess water to escape safely. To fight the dry season, they devised covered reservoirs and underground channels to shield their water from the heat. These were not just feats of labor, they were feats of thought. Every stone placed was an experiment, every successful canal a lesson learned. This foundational period, from simple ditches to the complex works at Jawa, reveals humanity's initial, determined steps toward true environmental mastery. The stage was now set for an explosion of hydraulic genius that would transform the ancient world. The success of a civilization could be measured by its ability to listen to the land. The very shape of an ancient water network was a direct response to the whispers and shouts of its local climate. In the flat, sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia, life was dictated by the twin giants of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These waterways did not gently nourish the land, they flooded it with violent, unpredictable surges. One year might bring a deluge that washed entire fields away, the next, a trickle that threatened famine. The Mesopotamian response was one of sheer control, a sprawling web of canals designed to tame the chaos. They dug these channels to divert floodwaters, to irrigate distant fields, and to slowly drain the saturated earth. Their entire agricultural empire was, in essence, a monumental battle for stability against unruly rivers. Half a world away, in the meticulously planned cities of the Indus Valley, the challenge was different but no less daunting. Their rivers, fed by powerful seasonal monsoons, would swell to immense proportions. Instead of fighting the water head-on, the engineers of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro performed a kind of graceful dance with it. They built their cities on massive mud brick platforms, raising them above the floodline. Their streets were laid out in precise grids, with sophisticated covered drains running beneath them. Every house had its own bathing area and wastewater outlet, all feeding into a city-wide sewage system. This was not just about irrigation, it was about urban sanitation on a scale that would not be seen again for thousands of years. They engineered their civilization to accommodate the flood, not just resist it. Climatologists studying ancient soil layers and ice cores have found that these societies did not build in a static world. The climate shifted, sometimes dramatically. A period of reliable rains might be followed by generations of drought. This is where the true genius of their systems becomes apparent. They were built with a deep foresight and inherent flexibility. A canal system designed for irrigation could also serve as a transportation network during peacetime. A reservoir built to capture monsoon rains would become a lifeline during a long, dry spell. Their survival depended on a continuous, careful reading of the environment, on observing subtle changes in the sky and the behavior of animals. They were not just building structures, they were encoding resilience into the landscape itself. This intimate interplay between a society and its specific environment forced a stunning diversity of solutions, proving that there was no single secret to mastering water, only the universal principle of intelligent adaptation. The sprawling grid of Mohenjo-Daro's streets reveals a society that thought generations ahead. Beneath those orderly lanes lay a hidden world of hydraulic engineering, a network of covered drains and chutes that channeled wastewater away from homes and public spaces. This was not a luxury, it was a foundational principle of urban life. At the very heart of the city stood the Great Bath, a watertight pool lined with precisely cut bricks and sealed with a natural tar. While it likely served a ritual purpose, its existence speaks to a profound cultural reverence for water, a blend of the spiritual and the utterly practical. The entire city was built to manage water with an almost obsessive precision. Archaeologists point to the standardized brick sizes used across the Indus Valley, a uniformity that allowed for the mass construction of reliable wells and drainage channels. Every house had its own bathing area, and waste from these rooms flowed into the main street drains through terracotta pipes, all designed to be easily cleaned and maintained. This was an unprecedented focus on public health, a system engineered to prevent contamination and disease in a densely populated metropolis. These networks did more than just keep the city clean, they enabled its very existence. A reliable water supply and efficient sanitation supported the high population densities that fueled craft specialization and bustling trade. The Indus Valley became a model of ancient urban sustainability, not through grand conquests, but through the quiet, daily miracle of clean water flowing in and waste flowing out. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that the true backbone of any lasting civilization is not its armies but its plumbing. To command a river is to command a people. In the sun-drenched lands of Mesopotamia, the great canal networks were far more than just ditches in the dirt. They were the very arteries of the state. While the Indus Valley engineered for urban health, the Sumerians and Babylonians undertook a geographical transformation on an epic scale. Their world was a flat, marshy delta, prone to chaotic flooding and thirsty evaporation. Their solution was to weave a new landscape into existence, a sprawling web of primary canals, secondary channels, and tiny field ditches that stretched for hundreds of miles. This colossal effort turned unpredictable swampland into the Fertile Crescent, an agricultural heartland that could feed cities of tens of thousands. But such a system demanded more than just engineering. It required absolute social order. The famous Code of Hammurabi, etched into stone around 1750 before the Common Era, did not merely deal with theft or murder. It meticulously codified water rights. Specific laws held farmers responsible for maintaining the canal banks adjacent to their land. If a man was careless and his negligence caused a breach that flooded his neighbor's field, he was legally obligated to compensate them for every grain of wheat lost. This was a revolutionary concept. Water was not a free-for-all resource, but a communal good protected by the full weight of the law. Cuneiform tablets from ancient city archives detail the immense, organized labor required to keep the system alive. Each year after the harvest, every able-bodied citizen was required to contribute to the dredging and repair of the canals. It was a collective ritual as vital as planting seeds. Scribes recorded the allocation of workers, the distribution of bread and beer to the laborers, and the precise measurements of silt removed. This was hydraulic management as a civic duty, the glue that held society together. The engineering itself was a quiet marvel. Without lasers or advanced surveying tools, these ancient engineers achieved something profoundly difficult. They built canals with the perfect gradient. The slope had to be just steep enough to keep the water moving and prevent stagnant silt from clogging the channel, yet gentle enough to avoid a torrent that would erode the earthen walls. They mastered this through generations of observation and refined technique. To control silt, they constructed settling basins, areas where the water would slow down, allowing sediment to drop out before the clearer water continued on its journey. This meticulous attention to slope and silt allowed these canals to function not for years but for centuries. The stability of the throne, the authority of the king, and the daily bread of every family were all dependent on the relentless, careful management of water. When the canals fell into disrepair, empires often crumbled with them. This profound link between hydraulic innovation and societal stability is a principle that echoes loudly down through the corridors of history. The orderly canals of Babylon stand in stark contrast to another legendary river system, one that mastered water through a deep, rhythmic partnership with nature. For the ancient Egyptians, the Nile was not a force to be tamed, but a divine heartbeat to be embraced. Every year, with astonishing regularity, the river would swell, bursting its banks and spreading a layer of rich, black silt across the floodplain. This was the event upon which all of Egyptian life was calibrated. The Greek historian Herodotus famously called Egypt the gift of the Nile, a civilization literally built from the river's annual deposits. Their genius lay not in fighting this cycle, but in orchestrating it. They developed a system called Basin irrigation, a masterpiece of elegant simplicity. Farmers would build low earthen walls to create large, shallow basins across the landscape. When the floodwaters came, they would open gaps in these walls, allowing the silt-laden water to pour in and soak the fields for weeks. Then, just before the planting season, they would drain the excess water back into the receding river, leaving behind perfectly fertilized and pre-moistened soil ready for seeds. This entire process required a society perfectly in sync with the river's rhythm. The coordination was breathtaking. Village priests, who were also the astronomers and record keepers, tracked the stars with meticulous care. They knew that the heliacal rising of the star Sirius just before dawn coincided perfectly with the coming of the flood. This celestial warning system gave farmers the critical time they needed to prepare their basins and channels. It was a seamless fusion of science, religion, and agriculture, all revolving around the predictable pulse of the Nile. Over 3,000 years, their methods saw only incremental improvements because the core system was so perfectly adapted to its environment. They developed the shaduf, a simple counterweight lever that allowed a single farmer to lift water from the river into the higher canals. It was a humble tool, but it extended the reach of their irrigation, enabling them to water gardens and orchards long after the flood had receded. While other empires rose and fell, the Egyptian agricultural model endured, a testament to the profound power of observing and integrating with natural cycles rather than attempting to dominate them. This was a hydraulic philosophy built on patience and precision, a starkly different path to the same ultimate goal of survival. While the Egyptians harnessed a river's annual pulse, Persian engineers solved a far more difficult puzzle: how to pull life from the heart of a desert. Their answer was not a grand canal on the surface, but a hidden world of tunnels known as the Kanat. This was a revolutionary technology, a subterranean river system engineered by hand. Imagine a chain of vertical shafts, like a line of wells dug into a mountainside, connected at their bases by a gently sloping tunnel. The system began with a mother well, drilled deep into the water table at the foot of a mountain where groundwater collected. From there, tunnelers, known as mukanis, would work backward, digging the main channel upward toward its destination, an oasis city many miles away. Each vertical shaft provided ventilation for the workers and a way to remove the excavated earth, creating the distinctive crater-pocked lines you can still see etched across the Iranian plains today. The true genius of the Kanat was its complete reliance on gravity. The tunnel's slope was calculated with breathtaking precision, often dropping only a few feet per mile. This gentle gradient allowed the water to flow steadily to the surface outlet without gaining enough speed to erode the tunnel walls. It was a perfect self-regulating system. The water emerged cool, clean, and protected from the relentless desert sun, with evaporation reduced to almost nothing. As one historian noted, the Kanat did not conquer the desert. It outsmarted it, enabling magnificent oasis cities like Persepolis to flourish in landscapes that were otherwise utterly uninhabitable. The construction of a single Kanat was a monumental communal effort, a project that could take generations to complete. The knowledge required, from identifying the right aquifer to calculating the perfect slope, was not written in books but passed down orally from master to apprentice. These mukanis formed a respected, almost mystical guild, their skills ensuring the survival of entire civilizations. They understood the hidden anatomy of the land in a way we have since forgotten. The final outlet, where the life-giving water finally spilled into the sunlight, was more than just a construction project. It was the birthplace of a community. This was a peak of sustainable water extraction, a technology so effective that some of these ancient tunnels still provide water to arid regions today, a silent, flowing testament to a lost science of patience and profound ingenuity. Far from the desert Kanats on the sun-drenched island of Crete, an entirely different water culture was flourishing. The Minoans of the Bronze Age built not for survival in the stark desert, but for elegance in a land of plenty. At the heart of their world stood the magnificent palace of Knossos, a labyrinthine complex that was a marvel of both art and engineering. Here, water was not merely channeled, it was celebrated. The Minoans engineered sophisticated aqueducts that brought fresh spring water from the surrounding hills, feeding not just the palace but the entire town. Imagine walking through those vibrant courtyards and coming upon a beautifully crafted public fountain, its cool, clear water available to all. This was a society that viewed a reliable water supply as a cornerstone of civilized life, a blend of pure practicality and public luxury. Archaeologists studying the ruins have uncovered a hidden network of hydraulic genius. Lining the channels and cisterns are terracotta pipes, expertly tapered to create tight, pressure-resistant seals. But the true sophistication lies in the details. they developed a special waterproof cement to line their reservoirs, preventing precious water from seeping into the ground. Even more remarkably, they constructed elaborate sedimentation tanks. As water flowed from the aqueducts into these basins, the current would slow, allowing sand, silt, and impurities to settle to the bottom before the cleaner water continued its journey to the fountains and palace baths. This was not just water transport, it was an early, deliberate form of water treatment, a clear concern for purity and public health. This mastery of water did more than just quench thirst, it enabled a cultural explosion. The stable, clean water supply supported a dense population of artisans, traders, and bureaucrats. It fed the advanced sanitation systems that kept the sprawling palace complex clean and habitable. With their basic needs so expertly met, the Minoans could focus their energies on creating breathtaking art, vibrant frescoes, and a complex system of commerce that stretched across the Mediterranean. Their flowing water systems mirrored the flowing lines of their pottery and the dynamic energy of their culture. The Minoan example presents a powerful idea that the highest function of infrastructure is not just to serve but to elevate. It shows us that the science of survival can also be the foundation for a life of beauty and grace, a lesson flowing quietly from the heart of a Bronze Age palace. Deep within the emerald heart of the Maya rainforest, a different kind of water challenge emerged. Here, the enemy was not a flooding river, but the dry season's relentless thirst. In the absence of great rivers, the Maya became masters of the sky, engineering entire cities to capture and hoard every drop of rain. At the great city of Tikal, the towering pyramids rise above a hidden landscape of hydraulic control. The central plazas themselves were not flat by accident, but carefully plastered and sloped to funnel rainwater into a vast, interconnected system of reservoirs. These were not simple ponds, but sophisticated tanks sealed with a thick, waterproof plaster made from burned limestone, a material they produced in massive quantities. The Maya did not just build on the land, they sculpted it, turning the entire city into a giant catchment basin that channeled the tropical downpours directly into their storage facilities. They even diverted seasonal streams, using the natural topography to guide water into their man-made reservoirs, creating a hybrid system that blended engineering with the existing ecology. This was survival dictated by the rhythm of the rains, but for the Maya, water was far more than a physical resource, it was a sacred force. Epigraphers deciphering ancient stone glyphs have found constant references to water deities like Chak, the long-nosed god of rain and lightning. Rituals and ceremonies were intrinsically linked to the maintenance of these water systems, suggesting that keeping the reservoirs full was not just a technical duty, but a spiritual obligation. The king, as the intermediary with the gods, was personally responsible for ensuring the rains came and the water lasted. This spiritual connection gave the control of water a profound political dimension. A ruler who could guarantee a full reservoir during the harsh dry season held immense power. The ability to provide water was the ultimate source of their authority, the key to sustaining the population of artisans, warriors, and farmers who built their majestic cities. The largest reservoirs were located right in the city's core, adjacent to the royal palaces and temples, a physical manifestation of this power. When a new king ascended, his first act might be to inaugurate the construction of a new reservoir, literally cementing his legacy and his right to rule. The Maya transformed their cities into intricate hydraulic machines, proving that even in a water-rich environment, the true test of a civilization was not finding water, but storing it, controlling it, and weaving it into the very fabric of their spiritual and political identity. 2,300 years ago, a governor faced a river that refused to be tamed. The Min River, crashing down from the Tibetan plateau, would regularly burst its banks, flooding the fertile Chengdu plain with devastating force while leaving it parched at other times. The solution, conceived by the brilliant engineer Lai Bing, was an act of genius that defied conventional thinking. He proposed not to block the river with a dam, but to persuade it. His philosophy, captured in a simple 6-character maxim, meant to dig the channels deep and to build the weirs low. This was the birth of the Dujiangyan irrigation system, a masterpiece of ecological engineering that still functions today. Instead of a wall, Lai Bing's team carved a mountain to create a diversion channel named the Precious Bottleneck. They constructed a long, low weir in the center of the river, cleverly shaped like a fish to split the current. During the flood season, the weir would guide the excess water into the outer channel, bypassing the plain entirely. In the dry season, it would ensure just enough water flowed into the inner network of canals to irrigate the fields. To manage the buildup of silt, a constant problem for any river system, they designed a flushing spillway that used the river's own power to scour the channel clean. This was not a battle against nature, but a profound collaboration with it. The legend says Lai Bing used massive bamboo cages filled with stones, structures that were strong enough to hold, yet flexible enough to withstand the river's fury. The result was a transformation. The once volatile Chengdu Plain became one of China's most productive and stable agricultural heartlands, earning the name Land of Abundance. This single project, fueled by the vision of one man and the labor of thousands, has been nourishing the region for over 2 millennia. Its longevity is a testament to the power of working with a river's logic rather than against it. Yet this was only one part of a much grander hydraulic vision unfolding across ancient China. While Lai Bing's system brought life to a region, another project sought to bind an entire empire together. The Grand Canal was an undertaking of almost incomprehensible scale, an artificial waterway stretching over 1,000 miles. Its primary purpose was to move grain, specifically tax rice from the fertile south to the capital and the massive armies in the arid north. But its true impact was far greater. The canal became the central artery of imperial China, a liquid highway that unified the empire's economy and culture. For the first time, people, goods, and ideas could flow reliably between the Yangtze and Yellow River basins. This was macro engineering on a staggering scale, a project that required the mobilization of millions of laborers over centuries. Historical texts describe the immense bureaucratic machinery needed to maintain it, with officials dedicated solely to dredging, lock maintenance, and water level management. The Grand Canal was more than a waterway, it was a statement. It demonstrated that the ultimate expression of imperial power was not just conquering territory, but seamlessly connecting it. These two monumental projects, Dujiangyan and the Grand Canal, represent the dual pillars of China's hydraulic legacy, one a model of local environmental harmony, the other a feat of continent-spanning ambition. Both required a long-term perspective that is difficult for us to even conceive of today, a planning horizon that looked not just decades but centuries into the future. They stand as enduring monuments to the idea that the most profound human achievements are those that flow with the grain of the natural world while simultaneously reshaping it for generations yet unborn. While the Minoans celebrated water's grace, the Romans perfected its conquest. Across the sprawling expanse of their empire, they engineered waterways that defied geography, carrying liquid life over vast distances to the heart of their bustling cities. The iconic aqueducts, with their towering arches marching across the landscape, were more than just stone channels. They were the ultimate expression of Roman will, a declaration that no terrain was too formidable to master. The core principle was deceptively simple: gravity. but achieving a perfect, consistent downhill flow from a mountain spring 50 miles away to a public fountain in Rome required a level of precision that still astonishes engineers today. Surveyors, using simple tools like the chorobates, a long, water-leveled plank, would map the route with painstaking care, ensuring the gradient dropped just enough to maintain a steady current without eroding the channel walls. The architect Vitruvius wrote extensively on this craft, stating that the care and diligence used in the construction of aqueducts should be in proportion to their importance. He detailed how teams of workers were perpetually employed to maintain the channels, cleaning out mineral deposits and repairing cracks, an institutional commitment that turned these structures from projects into permanent, living systems. This water fueled the very rhythm of Roman life. It gushed from countless public fountains, providing free, fresh water to every citizen. It filled the vast, echoing public baths, the thermae, which were not merely places to get clean but social hubs where business was conducted and community was forged. It flushed the sophisticated sewers like the Cloaca Maxima, keeping the city hygienic. The aqueduct was a physical symbol of Roman order and civic virtue, a promise that civilization could flourish anywhere so long as the water flowed. The secret to their incredible durability lay in the materials. Roman concrete, a revolutionary mix of lime, volcanic ash, and aggregate, was poured into massive, arched structures that grew stronger over time, actually hardening with exposure to water. This was a chemistry they understood intuitively, a recipe that allowed their aqueducts to withstand not just the centuries, but the immense weight and pressure of the water they carried. Some of these channels continued to function long after the empire itself had crumbled, their silent, flowing presence a ghost of the logistical genius that built them. The Roman standard for urban water supply became a blueprint for the ages, a high watermark of public infrastructure that would influence engineers for 1,000 years. Yet, this very mastery contained the seeds of a deeper mystery, for when Rome fell, the intricate knowledge required to build and maintain these networks did not simply vanish overnight. It faded piece by piece, leaving behind silent stone monuments and a question that would haunt the coming centuries. How could something so fundamental, so advanced, simply be lost? High in the Andes, entire mountainsides were sculpted into stairways of green. Here, the Inca and their predecessors faced a challenge of verticality, farming some of the steepest slopes on Earth. Their solution was a breathtaking integration of stone and water, transforming jagged peaks into fertile, productive farms. They built vast networks of terraces, each one a level shelf held firm by a perfectly fitted stone wall. These were not just gardens, they were massive earthworks that prevented the thin, precious topsoil from washing away in the violent mountain storms. But the terraces were only half the system. Woven through this engineered landscape were the acequias, canals that carried glacial melt and spring water with meticulous precision. The genius was in the distribution. Gravity did the work, but human intelligence guided every drop. The main canal would feed a secondary channel, which then branched into smaller ditches, each serving a specific family's plot. This was a hydraulic democracy, a system built on the principle of shared responsibility and equitable access. Community elders, known as the Mama Yoku or Mother Water in Quechua, would oversee the allocation. Using simple, time-honored methods, they ensured that every farmer received their fair share of the life-giving flow, a practice that turned water rights into a sacred social contract. The knowledge of how to build and maintain these systems was never written down in codices. It lives in the oral histories of the communities who still farm these same terraces today. They speak of the mountains as living beings, of the water as a spiritual force that must be respected and reciprocated. This deep, ancestral connection to the land is the true secret to the system's longevity. Modern agronomists studying these ancient farms are stunned by their resilience. The terraces not only prevent erosion, they create microclimates. The stone walls absorb heat during the day and release it slowly at night, protecting delicate crops from the harsh mountain frost. The acequias ensure that water infiltrates the soil slowly, recharging the groundwater instead of causing destructive runoff. This is a closed-loop system of astonishing efficiency, a model of sustainable mountain agriculture that has endured for over 1,000 years. In a world facing soil degradation and water scarcity, the silent, stair-stepped mountains of the Andes hold a powerful lesson that the most advanced technology is sometimes the one that listens most closely to the voice of the earth. The silence of a reservoir holds the collected wisdom of generations. Moving beyond simple canals and channels, ancient engineers confronted a more difficult puzzle: how to capture the fleeting bounty of a storm and hold it against the dry months. This was the dawn of reservoir science, a discipline that began with a hole in the ground and evolved into the creation of vast artificial lakes. In the wadis of Egypt, around 2,600 years before the Common Era, workers constructed the Sad al-Kafara, the dam of the pagans. It was a colossal undertaking, a massive wall of earth and rubble faced with stone that stretched nearly 400 feet across a valley to capture seasonal floodwaters. Its scale was unprecedented, but its design contained a fatal flaw. The builders had not yet perfected the spillway, the crucial safety valve that allows excess water to escape. Evidence suggests this first great dam was likely destroyed by its first major flood, a catastrophic lesson in the raw power of water it sought to contain. This failure, however, was not an end but a beginning. It proved the ambition of the age and highlighted the precise calculations required for success. The selection of a reservoir site was itself a sophisticated science. Engineers looked for natural bowls in the landscape, valleys with narrow outlets that could be easily sealed. They studied the underlying geology, seeking beds of dense clay that would naturally hold water, or carefully lining basins with layers of puddled clay, bricks, or cut stone to create an artificial impermeable seal. They were reading the land like a blueprint, identifying the perfect confluence of hydrology and terrain. Half a world away, in the dry zone of Sri Lanka, this science reached its zenith. The kings of Anuradhapura oversaw the construction of a breathtaking network of artificial lakes called tanks. The largest of these, like the Basawakulama tank, were vast inland seas built to intercept the monsoon rains. The system was a masterpiece of hydrology. A primary tank would capture water from a river, and then, through a series of meticulously graded canals, its overflow would be channeled to fill a secondary tank further downstream, and then a tertiary one, creating a chain of life across the arid plains. The calculations for capacity and spillway design, honed over centuries of trial and error, were astonishingly accurate. They built Bisakatuwa, which were essentially ancient valve pits, sophisticated drop shaft spillways made of precisely fitted stone that controlled the outflow of water from one tank to the next, dissipating the immense energy and preventing erosion. These tanks were not just reservoirs, they were the circulatory system of a civilization, supporting a dense population of farmers, monks, and artisans for over 1,000 years. They stored the monsoon's rage and released it as a gentle, year-long sigh of sustenance. Every earth embankment, every stone spillway, was a testament to a profound foresight, a physical manifestation of the understanding that true water security is not measured by the rain that falls, but by the wisdom with which it is kept. A reservoir is more than just stored water. It is a reflection of the society that built it. The true complexity of these ancient networks was not in the stone and earth, but in the human relationships they required. To manage water is to manage people, and this forced the creation of some of the earliest forms of social organization. In Bali, this relationship blossomed into a beautiful and enduring system known as the sabak. For over 1,000 years, Balinese farmers have managed their rice terraces not through a central authority, but through a network of water temples. Each farmer belongs to a sabak, a democratic cooperative that controls the water flowing to their specific area. The leaders are elected, and meetings are held to decide everything from planting schedules to the repair of canals. This is not merely a technical committee, it is a spiritual one. The decisions are made within the temple, blending practical need with religious duty. The entire system is a belief that the goddess Dewi Sri, the deity of rice and fertility, will only provide a bountiful harvest if the community is in harmony. The water allocation is a sacred rotation, a shared agreement that ensures every farmer, from the top of the terrace to the bottom, receives their fair share. This intricate social contract prevents conflict and fosters a profound sense of collective responsibility. Anthropologists studying the sabak note that it is a perfect example of a common pool resource management system. It proves that communities are capable of self-organizing to manage a scarce resource without top-down control, so long as the rules are clear, fair, and respected by all. Yet this cooperative model stands in stark contrast to the hydraulic states of the ancient world. In places like Mesopotamia or the Andes, the control of water often became the foundation of immense political power. A king who could command the labor to build a canal or the authority to distribute its water held the life of the society in his hands. This created a paradox. The very projects that united people in collective labor could also cement deep social hierarchies and power imbalances. The grand canals of Mesopotamia required thousands of workers, a mass mobilization that reinforced the authority of the ruling class. Access to water could become a tool for reward and punishment, creating a society where equity was a constant negotiation. This ancient tension between collective good and centralized control forces us to confront a difficult question. Who does the water belong to? Ancient societies grappled with this ethical dilemma constantly, their laws and customs representing an ongoing experiment in balancing human need with social order. The technology of channels and dams was only half the solution. The other half was the fragile, vital human art of cooperation. A perfectly engineered reservoir means nothing if the community cannot agree on how to share its bounty. This social dimension is the silent, often forgotten pillar of hydraulic science, a reminder that our greatest challenges with water have never been solely about engineering, but about learning to work together. The quiet precision of an ancient canal begins not with water, but with a line. Before a single stone was laid, engineers had to win a battle against gravity itself, ensuring their channels maintained a perfect, gentle slope for miles. They achieved this with tools of elegant simplicity. The Roman groma, a cross-shaped instrument with weighted plumb lines, allowed surveyors to sight straight lines and right angles across the rolling landscape. In Egypt, the legendary rope stretchers performed their own kind of magic. These were the master surveyors who used knotted ropes to measure the land after the Nile's annual flood. We now know they were using ropes with knots spaced to form specific triangles, unknowingly applying Pythagorean triples like 3, 4, 5, centuries before Pythagoras formalized the theorem. A triangle with sides in that ratio always contains a perfect right angle, a fundamental tool for laying out the precise boundaries of fields and the straight alignments of feeder canals. This was not abstract math, but a hands-on craft where geometry was literally woven into the fibers of a rope. Across the world in Mesopotamia, the mathematical mind was focused on a different challenge: volume. Cuneiform tablets from the city of Lhasa detail complex calculations for earth-moving projects. A scribe would record the length, width, and depth of a canal section to be dredged, then multiply them to find the total volume of silt. They even had standard conversion factors, calculating how much labor was required to move a specific volume of earth based on the soil type and the distance it needed to be carried. This was quantitative engineering on an industrial scale, a bureaucracy that thought in numbers. This shared mathematical foundation was the invisible blueprint that allowed for reproducible design across vast empires. A Roman engineer sent to Gaul and one sent to North Africa both used the same principles with their gromers and chorobates, creating infrastructure that was functionally identical. An Indus Valley builder in Mohenjo-Daro and another in Harappa used the same standardized brick ratios, allowing for the mass production of wells and drains. This consistency was the key to rapid, reliable expansion. The precision we see in these ancient hydraulics reveals a profound truth. A deep, working understanding of practical mathematics was thriving long before it was ever written down as formal theory. The true genius of these systems is found not just in the water they carried, but in the silent, unwavering logic that guided their creation. The strength of an empire flowed through the materials it mixed. Roman engineers discovered that a specific volcanic ash from Pozzuoli, when combined with lime and rubble, created a revolutionary substance, opus cementitium. This was no ordinary concrete, it was a stone that grew harder underwater, defying the very element it was built to channel. They poured this liquid rock into massive wooden molds to form the arches of their aqueducts, structures that have endured for 2,000 years. Half a world away, Indian masons perfected their own alchemy, blending lime with jaggery, a form of unrefined sugar, and fruit extracts to create a mortar with incredible plasticity and strength. This mixture was used to line the intricate stepwells of the subcontinent, creating watertight seals that prevented precious monsoon harvests from seeping back into the earth. Perhaps the most surprising recipe came from ancient China, where builders of the Ming dynasty added a common kitchen ingredient to their mortar: sticky rice. The amylopectin in the rice created a dense, organic composite that bonded with the limestone to produce a concrete more resistant to weathering and water than any standard mix. This sticky rice mortar was so effective that it was used to reinforce sections of the Great Wall and critical canal locks, its resilience proven by structures that still stand firm today. These were not random experiments, they were deliberate, refined sciences born from generations of observing how local materials behaved under stress. The choice was always a dialogue with the environment. Persian builders used the abundant gypsum of their landscape for waterproofing, while the Maya relied on the burned limestone or saskab that lay beneath their feet to plaster their vast reservoirs. The true scale of these projects comes into focus when we consider the construction itself. The miles of Kanat tunnels were not dug by machines, but by human hands, with workers known as mukanis passing baskets of earth up through successive vertical shafts in a painstaking chain of labor. The massive stone blocks for Egyptian dams were shaped and set using bronze saws and dolerite pounders, tools that required immense skill and patience. Simple wooden cranes and pulley systems, powered by teams of men or oxen, lifted these multi-ton stones into place, a testament to the power of coordinated human effort. The wooden forms for Roman concrete had to be perfectly crafted and braced to hold the immense weight until it cured, a temporary architecture that gave birth to a permanent one. Every material choice, from the volcanic ash of Italy to the sticky rice of China, and every method from the hand-dug tunnel to the precisely carved stone, reveals a universal truth. These ancient engineers were masters of resourcefulness, transforming the very substance of their land into legacies of water and stone that challenged the passage of time. A reservoir was never just a pool of water, it was a mirror to the heavens. The sacred texts of ancient India, the Vedas, sing of water as the very source of existence, the primordial element from which all life emerged. This was not mere poetry, it was a guiding principle that shaped the landscape. Stepwells like the magnificent Ronikai Vav were not simply engineering projects, they were inverted temples carved deep into the earth. As a devotee descended the intricately sculpted steps, moving past countless statues of gods and goddesses, they were performing a spiritual journey into the womb of the world to collect water that was considered divinely pure. Every aspect of its design, from its precise cardinal alignment to the celestial figures adorning its walls, reinforced the idea that water was a sacred gift and its management was a form of worship. This deep reverence translated into a powerful ethical code. The ancient law code of Manu explicitly states that building a water tank is a pious act that brings merit, while neglecting one or polluting a water source is a serious sin. This was a moral framework that made civic duty and spiritual duty one and the same. In Egypt, this connection was the bedrock of the state. The pharaoh was the living embodiment of the god Horus, and his most critical role was to mediate with the gods to ensure the Nile's annual flood. The success of the inundation was not just a matter of agricultural output, it was a direct measure of the king's divine favor. Elaborate ceremonies marked the beginning of the Canal cleaning season, with the pharaoh himself often symbolically breaking the ground. He was not just a ruler, he was the kingdom's chief hydraulic engineer because the gods demanded it. The entire civilization was built around a cosmology where the Nile was a celestial mirror, its flow on earth reflecting the heavenly river coursing through the underworld. This symbolic thinking directly influenced engineering. Canals and sacred pools were frequently aligned with the rising of specific stars like Sirius, whose appearance heralded the flood. The path of water was choreographed to mirror the path of the sun, creating a harmony between the terrestrial and the cosmic. A Maya king inaugurating a new reservoir at Tikal was not merely solving a water shortage, he was replicating the act of creation, channeling the power of the rain god Chak to sustain his people. His political legitimacy and the spiritual health of the kingdom flowed from that single source. This fusion of spirit and science gave these hydraulic networks a resilience that went beyond stone and mortar. It embedded them into the very identity of the culture, making their maintenance a sacred covenant between the people, their rulers, and the gods. When every drop of water is seen as a thread in a cosmic tapestry, its careful management becomes the most natural act in the world. That sacred connection to water forged a practical wisdom, one that looked to nature not as an obstacle to conquer, but as a teacher to emulate. The most enduring ancient systems were often those that mimicked natural processes, creating a sustainable loop of fertility and filtration. In the heart of the Valley of Mexico, the Aztecs and their predecessors perfected this art with the Chinumpa. These were not merely floating gardens, but artificially raised fields constructed in the shallow lake beds. Workers wove huge mats from reeds and aquatic vegetation, then anchored them with stakes and piled them high with nutrient-rich mud dredged from the lake bottom. The result was a grid of long, narrow islands separated by canals. This design was a masterpiece of biomimicry. The canals acted as both transportation routes and as a constant source of moisture for the crops. More remarkably, they served as giant aquaculture farms, teeming with fish and waterfowl. The waste from these aquatic creatures would naturally fertilize the Chinumpa plots, while the farmers would replenish the soil after each harvest by simply scooping up more of the fertile muck from the canal beds. It was a self-renewing agricultural engine that yielded up to 7 harvests a year, feeding the immense city of Tenochtitlan without any need for artificial fertilizers or complex machinery. It was a closed, circular system powered entirely by gravity and biological cycles. Modern ecologists point to these systems as pinnacles of low-energy input and high-output efficiency. They did not fight the wetland environment, they enhanced it, creating a symbiotic relationship that boosted biodiversity while providing immense food security. This stands in stark contrast to many modern interventions where we straighten rivers, drain wetlands, and disrupt natural floodplains. We replace complex, self-regulating ecosystems with brittle, high-energy solutions that require constant inputs and maintenance. The ancient approach was fundamentally adaptive, observing and integrating with the local ecology rather than simplifying it. They used seasonal floods to their advantage, as the Egyptians did, allowing the river to deposit its own fertilizer. They understood that a wetland was not wasted land, but a natural kidney that could filter impurities from water. Modern engineers are now relearning these very principles, creating constructed wetlands to treat wastewater and rediscovering the value of floodplain restoration for both water retention and habitat creation. The resilience of these ancient hydraulics in the face of climatic shifts offers a powerful blueprint for our own future. They teach us that true water security is not about building bigger walls against nature, but about weaving our needs into the existing tapestry of the land, creating systems that are not just efficient but alive. Even the most brilliant water systems cannot outlast the society that cares for them. The intricate networks of canals and reservoirs, which had sustained civilizations for centuries, often entered a period of slow, quiet unraveling. The decline was rarely a single event, but a cascade of failures, both human and environmental. A powerful example lies in the sun-scorched deserts of Arizona, where the Hohokam people engineered the most extensive irrigation system in prehistoric North America. For over 1,000 years, their canals, some 30 feet wide and dug entirely with stone tools and human labor, channeled the volatile waters of the Salt and Gila rivers. Then, around the middle of the 15th century, the system was abandoned. The great platform mounds and ball courts were left empty. Archaeologists sifting through the sediment have found clues to a complex tragedy. The very success of their agriculture may have led to its downfall. Centuries of irrigation without fallow periods slowly poisoned the soil with alkaline salts, a process called salinization, which eventually renders land barren. Compounded by a series of severe droughts, the land could no longer support the population it had once fed. The Hohokam canals are a stark monument to a silent crisis, resource depletion. It was not a sudden invasion that ended this civilization, but the slow, creeping exhaustion of the very environment they had so skillfully engineered. Across the world in Europe, a different kind of collapse unfolded in the centuries after the fall of Rome. The aqueducts that had supplied cities like Rome itself with millions of gallons of water daily fell into a profound silence. Historical records from the early Middle Ages speak of broken arches and channels choked with debris. The knowledge of how to survey the perfect gradient, how to mix the waterproof concrete, and how to manage the complex system of maintenance had been held by a centralized, bureaucratic state. When that state dissolved, the institutional memory dissolved with it. The aqueducts required an army of specialists and a steady flow of resources. A coordinated effort that fractured into a patchwork of local lordships focused on immediate survival. Without that centralized authority and its long-term vision, the monumental infrastructure became a relic, its purpose fading into legend. This loss of technical skill was accelerated by another subtle shift, the move away from oral tradition. For millennia, the secrets of building a Kanat or maintaining a terrace system were passed directly from master to apprentice, a living chain of practical knowledge. This knowledge was embedded in stories, songs, and hands-on demonstration, not in written manuals. As populations urbanized or were displaced, as younger generations moved away from the land, these fragile oral traditions were often the first thing to break. The specific timing for cleaning a canal, the ritual that placated the water spirit, the precise feel of the right clay for sealing a reservoir, all of this nuanced understanding could vanish in a single generation. The story of these declines carries a sobering warning for our own time. It reveals that our most advanced systems are not self-sustaining monuments, but living processes that demand continuous stewardship. They depend not just on engineering, but on stable societies, on the preservation of knowledge, and on a respectful relationship with the environment. When any one of these pillars falters, the flow of water, and with it the pulse of civilization, can gradually slow to a whisper. The jungle had hidden its secrets for centuries, but now the earth itself is beginning to speak. Modern archaeology is using tools its predecessors could never have dreamed of to listen. From the air, laser scanners known as LiDAR pierce the dense Cambodian canopy, painting a ghostly image of the land beneath. What was once thought to be an impenetrable wilderness around the temples of Angkor is now revealed as a sprawling, engineered landscape. The data shows a vast, low-density metropolis crisscrossed by hundreds of miles of canals and dotted with enormous reservoirs called barrays. One of these reservoirs, the West Barray, is so massive it remains one of the largest hand-cut bodies of water on Earth. The lasers are mapping a hydraulic city on a scale that rewrites our understanding of urbanism. On the ground, this digital map comes to life. An archaeologist clearing a root-choked embankment might suddenly find their fingers tracing the grooves of a perfectly carved sandstone sluice gate, an ancient water control valve hidden for 800 years. These are the eureka moments that connect a line on a screen to a human hand, proving the intentional design behind the grid. Elsewhere, scientists are drilling deep into the mud at the bottom of these ancient reservoirs. They extract long, cylindrical cores of sediment, which act like a timeline of the city's life. Each layer of silt and pollen tells a story. A thick band of coarse sand might speak of a catastrophic flood that overwhelmed the system, while a gradual buildup of fine clay could record centuries of meticulous maintenance. We can now read the history of Angkor's water management not from stone inscriptions, but from the dirt itself. The science goes even deeper. Researchers are now using isotopic analysis, a technique that examines the unique chemical fingerprints of water molecules trapped in ancient construction materials. By analyzing the isotopes in the lime mortar of a canal, they can trace the specific water source the builders used. Did they tap a local stream, or did they have the confidence to channel water from a distant mountain spring? The answer reveals the sophistication of their hydrological understanding and the boldness of their engineering choices. Each of these discoveries, from a laser scan to a soil core, is a piece of a global puzzle. In the American Southwest, aerial photography is uncovering vast, previously unnoticed networks of Hohokam irrigation canals. In the Mediterranean, sonar is mapping sunken Roman harbors and their freshwater conduits. The collective evidence is overwhelming, forcing a dramatic correction to our historical narrative. We can no longer view these ancient societies as primitive. They were hydraulic giants whose mastery of water allowed them to build cities in impossible places and sustain populations that would be challenging even today. This ongoing rediscovery is more than an academic exercise. It is a renaissance. It fuels a new appreciation for a lost science that was both profoundly practical and deeply intelligent, a science we are only just beginning to understand again. That same wisdom that carved Kanats through mountains is now being revived to quench modern thirst. In the arid regions of India, communities are not just digging new wells, they are resurrecting ancient stepwells. These magnificent structures, once the vibrant heart of villages, had fallen into disuse and were filled with trash. Now, local groups are cleaning them out, stone by stone, restoring the intricate filtration systems of sand and gravel that naturally purify rainwater as it percolates down. This is not mere restoration, it is a practical solution. A single revived stepwell can recharge the groundwater for an entire neighborhood, turning a seasonal downpour into a year-round resource. It is a perfect fusion of ancient civic design and contemporary environmental need, proving that the old ways can hold new answers. Engineers are also looking back to improve the future. One civil engineer working on a major canal project in California explained how his team studied the gradients of Roman aqueducts. The Romans achieved a slope so precise that water moved steadily for 50 miles without stagnating or eroding the channel. By applying similar, gentler gradients to modern concrete canals, they have significantly reduced the need for powerful, energy-hungry pumps. This ancient principle of letting gravity do the work is now a key strategy for cutting operational costs and carbon footprints in massive water transfer projects. This shift in thinking is crucial for building resilience. Centralized systems that rely on pumps and treatment plants are vulnerable to power outages and extreme weather. Decentralized, gravity-fed networks, modeled on the distributed tanks of Sri Lanka or the community-managed acequias of the Andes, create a more robust web. If one part fails, the others continue to function. This ancient approach to water security is a powerful blueprint for weathering the climate disruptions of today, offering a path to communities that are not just supplied but truly sustained. The most profound lesson from these applications is not about replicating specific technologies, but about adopting a different philosophy. It is a return to working with the landscape, not against it, and to valuing foresight and community management over short-term fixes. The quiet intelligence of the past is becoming an essential voice in the conversation about our future. While the grand canals and reservoirs were often credited to kings and male engineers, the daily reality of water was a story written largely by women. For millennia, their hands were the first to touch the water each day, carrying it, storing it, and ensuring its purity for their families and communities. In the earliest agrarian settlements, the division of labor was starkly practical. While men might have cleared land for fields, the relentless, daily task of fetching water from wells or nearby streams fell to women and children. This was not a minor chore, but a central pillar of survival that required immense strength and time. Their intimate, daily contact with water sources made them the first hydrologists, the ones who knew the seasonal rhythms of a spring, which well had the sweetest water, and how to keep a storage jar clean. This deep, practical knowledge became a form of power, passed silently from mother to daughter through generations. In some societies, this role evolved into formal authority. Among the Kosi people of northeastern India, a matrilineal system meant that land and resources were traced through the female line. Here, women were not just water carriers but the primary decision-makers in its management. The youngest daughter, the Kakada, inherited the ancestral home and with it, the responsibility for the family's sacred water sources. She presided over rituals at the community spring and had the final say in disputes over its use. In this context, female leadership in water governance was not an exception. It was the rule, a social structure that recognized the vital link between women, water, and the continuity of life itself. This tangible, earthly power of women was mirrored in the spiritual realm. Cultures across the globe personified water as a feminine force. The Greeks told stories of nurturing nymphs who presided over every spring, river, and ocean. In Hindu tradition, the Ganga is not just a river, but a goddess who descended from heaven to purify the earth, her flowing hair represented in the countless streams of the delta. The Celts venerated Sulis at the thermal springs of Bath, a deity of healing and wisdom. These were not just pretty myths, they were profound cultural acknowledgments. By making water female, these societies encoded a deep reverence for its life-giving and sometimes terrifying power, a power that they saw reflected in the women who managed it daily. Ethnographic studies of villages in Nepal and Bali document this lived expertise. In the Balinese Subak system, while men often handle the physical labor in the rice fields, women are the primary managers of the household's water allocation. They are the ones who decide when to open the small gates that let water flow into their family's plot, a subtle but critical form of control over agricultural success. Their knowledge of how much water each crop stage needs is precise and honed by a lifetime of observation. This gendered division of labor, however, also created stark inequalities. In many ancient patriarchal states, while women performed the grueling work of water carrying, they were often excluded from the planning and governance of large-scale systems. Their vital, unpaid labor became invisible, a backdrop to the official histories that celebrated male engineers and rulers. The implications for equity were profound. When women are not part of the decision-making process, the systems built often fail to account for their specific needs, such as the location of a well for safety or the design of household storage. Recognizing these contributions does more than just correct the historical record. It fundamentally transforms our understanding of hydraulic science. It reveals that this grand human project was never solely about monumental architecture, but about the collective, daily endeavor of countless individuals whose quiet wisdom flowed as steadily as the water they cherished. Two great hydraulic traditions emerged on opposite ends of the ancient world, one in the river basins of China and the other across the Roman Empire. Their approaches to water reveal a fundamental divide in philosophy and purpose. Chinese engineers, guided by principles of Taoist harmony, sought to integrate their works with the natural flow of the environment. Their masterpieces, like the Dujiangyan system, were acts of persuasion, designed to guide rivers gently and prevent the catastrophic floods that threatened agricultural stability. The ultimate goal was balance, creating systems that sustained the land for millennia. Roman hydraulics, in contrast, were a testament to stoic discipline and imperial will. Their objective was dominion over nature to serve the urban core. The aqueducts were monumental declarations of power, marching across valleys to deliver vast quantities of water to public fountains, baths, and sewers, fueling the engine of city life and displaying the might of the state. One civilization aimed to harmonize with a river's spirit, the other to command it. This philosophical schism dictated the very materials they used. In East Asia, the preferred mediums were earth and wood, materials that were flexible, local, and biodegradable. The Dujiangyan weir was originally built from bamboo cages filled with stone, a structure that could yield to a flood's pressure without shattering. Chinese canals were often lined with compacted earth, a method that required constant maintenance but allowed the water to breathe and interact with the soil. The Roman world, striving for permanence and grandeur, turned to stone and revolutionary concrete. Their aqueducts were built to stand for eternity, their arches a permanent scar of human ambition on the landscape. Roman concrete, a mix of lime and volcanic ash, actually hardened with water, making it the perfect substance to defy the very element it channeled. One culture built for resilience through adaptation, the other for endurance through immutable strength. Historians note that these priorities produced starkly different legacies. The Chinese focus on flood control and agricultural irrigation created systems that became deeply woven into the fabric of rural life. Because they served a fundamental, ongoing need for farmers, the knowledge of maintaining them was preserved locally, passed down through generations. The Dujiangyan system, for instance, is still in use today, a 2,000-year-old testament to continuity. In Rome, the hydraulic network was a creature of the centralized state. Its spectacular aqueducts depended on imperial taxes, a professional army of engineers, and a complex bureaucracy for upkeep. When the empire fractured, that support system vanished. The knowledge of surveying such vast distances and mixing the special concrete faded, and the magnificent channels fell silent, their broken arches becoming symbols of a lost golden age. The water system of the West experienced a profound rupture, while the East maintained an unbroken, if less spectacular, flow. This comparison is not about declaring one system superior, but about appreciating the diverse paths to mastery. It reveals that our relationship with water is never just technical. It is a reflection of our deepest beliefs about humanity's place in the natural world. The Roman approach gave us the awe-inspiring architecture of urban convenience, while the Chinese model perfected the art of long-term, sustainable coexistence. One was a brilliant flash of centralized power, the other a slow, steady burn of communal wisdom. Both hold crucial lessons for a world now grappling with the limits of its own engineering hubris. The true cost of a civilization's thirst was measured in sweat and grain. While the spiritual and technical dimensions of ancient hydrology are profound, none of it was possible without a robust economic engine driving the labor and funding these monumental works required. From the sun-baked fields of Egypt to the bustling markets of Rome, water management was fundamentally a financial undertaking. In Egypt, the state operated on a system known as corvée labor. Each year after the Nile's flood receded, every able-bodied peasant was required to contribute weeks of work to dredging canals and repairing dikes. This was not a paid job, but a tax paid in physical effort, a direct exchange of labor for the collective security the hydraulic system provided. The state fed and housed these massive workforces, a logistical operation that itself required immense planning and resources. In Mesopotamia, the funding was more direct. Cuneiform tablets from Ur detail how temple and palace estates, the central banks of the ancient world, financed canal projects from their vast stores of silver and barley. They would pay specialized crews of engineers and overseers, while also providing for the common laborers drawn from the local population. This was an early form of public works spending, with the state investing its capital to secure a future return in agricultural taxes. The economic historian Carl Wittfogel famously argued that this need for large-scale, organized irrigation was the catalyst for what he called hydraulic states, where centralized, despotic power emerged to coordinate the labor and discipline necessary to control water. While his theory is debated, the core insight remains powerful. The control of water and the consolidation of political power were two sides of the same coin. The implicit cost-benefit analyses in these ancient records are startlingly sophisticated. A Mesopotamian scribe would calculate the volume of earth to be moved for a new canal, estimate the number of worker days required, and then project the increased crop yield from the newly irrigated land. They were weighing the upfront cost in food and labor against the long-term stream of tax revenue. The payoff could be astronomical. the Roman grain supply is the ultimate example. The vast, tax-funded network of aqueducts and ports was not built for altruism. It was an economic strategy. By ensuring a stable, massive supply of water to its cities, Rome could support a huge non-farming population of soldiers, bureaucrats, and artisans. The surplus grain shipped from Egypt and North Africa fed the city of Rome itself, preventing unrest and fueling an economy of scale that underpinned centuries of imperial stability. This was water management creating the conditions for an economic boom. The ability to produce consistent agricultural surpluses did more than just feed cities. It stimulated long-distance trade. A farmer with excess grain could trade it for olive oil from Greece, wine from Gaul, or incense from Arabia. The canals and rivers that watered the fields also became the highways for these goods, with the same hydraulic networks that enabled production also facilitating distribution. The wealth generated from this trade then flowed back to the state in the form of taxes and tariffs, creating a virtuous cycle of investment and return. The grandest reservoirs and canals were never just feats of engineering. They were the physical manifestation of a society's economic ambition, a bold wager that the collective investment of today would yield a more prosperous and powerful tomorrow. A persistent myth suggests these ancient builders were primitive, their methods crude and dependent on endless slave labor. The reality is far more compelling. The precision of a Roman aqueduct or the perfect slope of a Kanat tunnel was not the product of mindless toil, but of highly skilled artisans and engineers. These were specialized professions, their knowledge honed through rigorous apprenticeships. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform tablets record payments of silver and beer to skilled workers who directed canal projects, not just masses of forced laborers. The sheer complexity of the planning, from the mathematics of volume calculation to the celestial alignment of reservoirs, speaks to a sophisticated intellectual tradition, not brute force. While large projects did utilize corvée labor, a form of civic duty or tax, the brains behind the operation were experts whose skills were valued and compensated. Another common misconception paints these societies as perfect ecological stewards, always in harmony with their environment. The archaeological record tells a more nuanced story. In Mesopotamia, the very success of their irrigation led to a silent crisis. Centuries of watering the flat plains without adequate drainage caused water to evaporate, leaving behind toxic concentrations of salt. Cuneiform tablets from the late periods lament the bitter taste of the soil and the failure of wheat crops, which are highly sensitive to salinity. This was a clear case of environmental degradation, a long-term consequence they could not foresee or easily reverse. It is a powerful reminder that even the most advanced systems could have unintended ecological costs. The origins of these technologies are also often misunderstood. The popular narrative sometimes attributes grand works to foreign inspiration or sudden invention, yet the evidence points overwhelmingly to local innovation, a slow accumulation of knowledge born from direct, generational interaction with a specific landscape. The stepwells of India, for instance, evolved independently as a response to the monsoon climate and the deep water tables of the region. Their distinct architectural and spiritual form is a product of their environment, not an imported idea. While trade and cultural exchange certainly spread techniques, the core genius was almost always homegrown, a solution crafted to meet a local need. And what of the so-called lost knowledge? It is true that the institutional memory to build a Roman aqueduct faded with the empire that supported it, but the idea that all this science vanished is a dramatic overstatement. In countless communities, the essential principles persisted. The technology of the Kanat was carried by Persian engineers across the Middle East and North Africa. The Sabak system of Bali continues to function today, its water-sharing rituals preserved through an unbroken oral tradition. The knowledge was not always lost, it was often decentralized, living on in the practices of farmers and local craftsmen rather than in imperial libraries. By clearing away these myths, we see these ancient engineers not as mystical sages or simple brutes, but as practical, brilliant problem solvers. They achieved wonders, but they were also human, capable of missteps and constrained by their own understanding. This more accurate view makes their genuine accomplishments all the more remarkable, and their lessons for our own time all the more urgent. The silent intelligence of these ancient systems offers a powerful blueprint for our own thirsty future. Imagine combining the timeless efficiency of a gravity-fed canal with the predictive power of artificial intelligence. A modern engineer could embed sensors throughout a network inspired by the Roman aqueducts or Sri Lankan tanks, feeding real-time data on flow, soil moisture, and weather patterns to a central algorithm. This AI could then make micro-adjustments to sluice gates, optimizing distribution with a precision the original builders could only dream of, all while using virtually no energy beyond the initial pull of gravity. This is not a rejection of modern technology, but a fusion where silicon chips serve the same principles of balance and foresight that were once encoded in stone and ritual. We could design new reservoirs not as sterile concrete bowls, but as living ecosystems, applying the biomimicry of the Aztec Chinumpas on a grand scale. Shorelines could be engineered with wetland plants that naturally filter pollutants, while the water body itself supports aquaculture, creating a self-cleaning, food-producing system that mimics the resilience of a natural lake. This approach could breathe life back into our agricultural landscapes. Why are we only growing a handful of water-intensive modern crops? Archaeobotanists are now rediscovering lost staples, grains and legumes that once flourished under ancient irrigation. These forgotten crops are often naturally drought-resistant, pest-tolerant, and deeply nutritious. Reviving them is not about abandoning progress, but about expanding our toolkit, creating agricultural systems that are more biodiverse and inherently more secure. The choice before us is not between the past and the future, but between brittle centralization and resilient distribution. We can champion policies that move beyond simply building bigger dams and instead support local, community-managed water trusts. These modern subacts could empower towns and neighborhoods to steward their own watersheds, blending traditional knowledge of local ecosystems with modern data and governance. This journey through lost hydraulic science forces a larger question. If our ancestors could achieve so much with so little, what other forgotten wisdoms lie buried in the archives of history, waiting to be rediscovered? What knowledge of medicine, of materials, of social organization have we misplaced in our rush toward a uniform modernity? The most profound innovation may not be inventing something entirely new, but remembering what we have already learned and having the wisdom to weave those ancient threads into the fabric of our future. We have traveled from the deserts of Persia to the mountains of the Andes, uncovering a global legacy of water wisdom written in stone and earth. These ancient networks were far more than just engineering. They were a profound collaboration between human ingenuity and the natural world. They teach us that true sustainability is not found in conquering a river, but in listening to it, not in hoarding water, but in sharing it wisely across a community. The silent, gravity-fed flow of a Kanat, the equitable distribution of a Balinese subak, the self-renewing cycle of a Chinumpa, these are not relics of a forgotten past. They are living blueprints for a more resilient future, reminding us that the most advanced systems are often those that work in concert with the world around them. Let this journey inspire you to look at every drop of water with a new reverence, to see it as our ancestors did, a sacred thread in the web of life. We now carry the responsibility to ensure this vital knowledge is never lost again, to champion solutions that blend timeless tradition with modern innovation. Which of these ancient practices speaks most deeply to you? Share your reflections in the comments below and subscribe to continue exploring the hidden wonders that shape our world.